Odds and Ends by Corndog_Patrol and For the Wolfie on AO3. Chapter 3 Quick Reflexes. Hisashi was shaken, and all his friends could easily tell, despite his carefully composed demeanor. Is everything alright? Tensei asked him once Nomori had shuffled Shoda out of the room. As he asked the question, his friend lifted an arrow-shaped eyebrow. Of course, Hisashi lied. He's rough around the edges, but I'm sure he'll warm up with time. It wasn't Shoda's attitude that had shaken him, though. He would have signed the papers no matter what. Doubly, if he thought no one else would have agreed to have him. No. What had really shaken the vampire was Shoda's blood. After they left the center, Hisashi had been haunted by both the scent of Shoda's blood and his stupid fastening. It had been impulsive to request a mouthful, especially since he hadn't even been at the car yet, but he figured he should have at least asked. When the human had willingly offered his throat, Hisashi hadn't been able to resist. As he brought his fangs to the offered neck, he had been spurred by the sound of blood pumping through the human's vein, and the steady thump of a heart. However, there had been a pungent scent of something else. Silver. Despite the smell of strong soap, it had been hard to mix the toxic odor beneath. It had made Shota's nose crinkle. Silver was dangerous for vampires. Not only was it considered foul by their senses, but direct contact burned them and interrupted their natural healing process. The human had worn a silver collar until recently. Only two types of human wore those: ones who were terrified of vampires, and vampire hunters. However, there was no way a vampire hunter would have passed a background check to become a donor, so that only left the former. Hisashi had a chance to stop there, moments before biting down. He almost had. However, the scent of the human's blood just below the surface of the skin had been a siren song. He'd bitten down, ignoring the initial edge of silver, and had drunk. Hisashi had never imagined anything could have tasted so amazing. Shoda's blood had been sweet, ambergris, even more so than his scent had hinted. He kept his taste to a mouthful as promised, although pulling away had been one of the most difficult tasks he had ever accomplished. Something odd had happened after drinking it, though. Hisashi's body had grown especially hot, and his breathing had become ragged. His pants had tightened, and the human's handsome face had filled his mind. It was a reaction he'd never had before from drinking bagged blood, and it was through a haze that he realized the issue. Some old human families possessed blood that had side effects on vampires. It was a hidden defense mechanism that had developed with time. Some had evolved to defend the human, some to kill vampires, and some to help vampires. As a reason to keep their bloodline alive. They were extremely rare, but his donor was apparently one of them. Hisashi had realized too late what power lurked in Hisashi's blood. It was an aphrodisiac. Thankfully, since he only had a mouthful, the effect was minor, but it certainly posed a problem for Shoda's future as a donor. He was surprised the government had let him be a donor at all, since they surely would have tested his blood beforehand. Perhaps it had been deemed harmless? Hisashi had been snapped away from the heated realization by the sound of Shota's heart speeding up. That sound alone had sent a sharp chill through his spine. Had Shoda been scared? Guilt had hurried through him, and even now it continued. He'd been excited at the prospect of having his own donor, but... You sure everything's okay? Tensei asked again, drawing him back to the present. Of all the people in the manor, he knew Hisashi the longest, and was typically the first to call him out on his little lies. He's just not what I expected, Hisashi finalized. It was pretty much the truth. He'll warm, Tensei assured him as they headed towards Hisashi's office. The butler moved just as fast as anyone, despite the wheelchair, and he kept pace with ease. Yeah, Hisashi said with a sigh. I get a bad vibe from him, Khan growled, walking on Hisashi's other side. He could be dangerous. They would have done a background check when Shoda's requested being a donor. Khan huffed. You know firsthand how thorough those checks are. After all, you passed your background check. Hisashi stopped, walking, at that. Tensei and Khan stopped several moments later. The bodyguard had realized his transgression too late, although he still said, I'm sorry, Hisashi. The blonde, however, forced himself to smile. I guess you're right about those background checks. If anything's off, then at least I have you to protect me. He started walking again, pretending not to notice the stern look Tensei shot at Kan. Remind me of my upcoming schedule. Tensei returned to his side, while the guard now trailed them. Tomorrow night you have a suitor over for tea. You also have Hurry's extended party to perform at soon. I've left the written schedule on the event on your desk. Nomura will be giving one to Shoda tour, although if you'd like to be involved, that should be happening early tomorrow. Hisashi perked at the last point, before almost instantly deflating. No, I should give him some space while he settles. He'll probably feel more comfortable around Nomura until he warms up to us. I get the feeling he isn't particularly fond of vampires, despite his chosen occupation. He recalls the bitter twinge of silver on Shoda's neck, and the way his heart had sped up with fear. Well then, you'll just have the suitor look forward to. Right, Hisashi murmured. Joy! Shall I have it postponed? He sighed and finally entered his study. The walls were lined with bookshelves, and Sensei was already hurrying ahead to light some candles. Might as well get the disappointment out of the way, Hisashi said, as fast as he could, as he sat down on his desk. It was strewn with papers, half of which were unopened letters from interested suitors. He was 30, rich, famous, talented, from a noble bloodline, and single. And so suddenly he'd become a very sought-after bachelor. High society was certainly fickle. You also have the masquerade ball in 2 weeks, Tensei reminded. Hisashi sunk further into his chair. Right, he said while waving a hand. Thank you, Tensei. I should be capable from here. Oh, please book a tailor for Shoda. I bet he'll appreciate some new clothes. Hanakana always does a fine job. Nothing trashy, though. The butler nodded and left. Khan leaned beside the doorway, although he said nothing more. Hisashi swapped his monocle for his glasses and tried to focus on the work in front of him, although it wasn't entirely enough to take his mind off of the taste of Shoda's blood. Shoda woke early in the morning to find his room had been undisturbed. The gentle ray of sunlight shone through the curtains he had forgotten to close, bathing his room with warmth. Yesterday I almost felt like a dream, until he felt the fang marks on his neck and crinkled his face. At least his plan was successful so far. He took the opportunity to get up and exit the room onto the balcony, so he could get some fresh air. The garden was beautiful, with plenty of flower beds and open space. Shoda had to keep fit for vampire slaying, and he decided the place would be perfect for a run, although he didn't know how to reach the gardens from his room. He glanced down, but he was on the 2nd story, and the fall wouldn't be worth risking his limbs. As he looked over the garden, he noticed a figure waving at him in the distance. It was the vamp with the cloud-like hair who had driven the car before, and it looked Shouta a while to remember his name was Oboro. The myth about vampires hating sunlight was just that, a myth. He wished it was that easy to slay the leeches. Shoda forced himself to wave back at the vampire, but he no longer felt any need for morning air. As he went back into his room, he remembered the maid, Nomura, had mentioned bringing him some dinner, but he hadn't been disturbed during the night. He opened the door to his room and found nothing waiting for him. Perhaps he had been forgotten. Well, they promised to give him a tour this morning, but they hadn't explicitly told him to stay in his room. How difficult could it be to find the kitchen? Shoda went back inside his room, opened the bag he brought, found some fresh clothes inside. To his annoyance, Emma had removed all his spare clothes. Not that there had been a lot to begin with. Instead, he found a note from her that read, "He'll dress you up better than you can. Shoda scowled at that. He was a human. He wasn't some doll or pet for the vampire to play dress-up with. Thanks to Nomori, he had no choice but to wander the manor with the same clothes he had worn the night before, with a damn blouse that was far too thin to be an effective piece of clothing. The hall sketched on, but he was able to recall the way to the entrance. However, once he was there, he had no idea where else to go. He leaned on the railing and stared down at the front door of the manor. Well, he did know where one of the vamps was. Still, the mere thought of willingly seeking out a leech to ask for directions wounded his pride. He decided to return to his room instead, but paused when he turned back to the hallway he originally came from. There was no way of knowing which door belonged, temporarily, to him. Lost? Asked the voice behind him, and the sound of approaching wheels informed him which vamp it belonged to. Shoda turned to see the butler, although he couldn't remember his name. This place can be very disorientating. Perhaps you had a specific place you wished to visit? The slayer scratched the back of his neck, but managed to ask, "Is there a kitchen?" Technically, he wasn't asking for directions. "Of course, Shoda," said the vampire with a smile, and it was clear he was trying to hide his fangs as much as possible. "Nimue tried to bring your dinner last night, but you didn't answer her knocking. She was quite worried, but I imagine you must have been exhausted. I believe our chef, Obero, is in the kitchen at the moment. I could fetch him if you require something expensive, but we could settle down for breakfast in an hour anyways. Would you like something small suffice until then?" Shoda nodded, surprised that he had slept through Nomori's knocking. Then again, he hadn't been sleeping well as of late, and the bed had been extremely comfortable. "Small is fine." "Perfect!" The butler wheeled to the staircase and positioned his chair on a platform connected to the railing. There was a small crank attached to it, and with a few turns, the platform lowered down the stairs. Shoda stared at the gears at work and was rather impressed by the mechanism. He hadn't seen anything similar before, and the vamp noticed his sharp gaze. Hisashi's a bit of an inventor when he isn't practicing his music or dealing with eager suitors. The image of a cartoony vamp who had bitten him had Shoda's mood sour, although he said nothing as he paced down the stairs. As they walked through another impossibly long corridor, the butler pointed out a few doors of interest, but it was too early for him to commit them to memory. Soon they arrived at the kitchen, although the vampire pointed at the dining room directly across it, which had an archway instead of a door, knowing that it would be easy for Shoda to find the kitchen in the future. "Feel free to sit while I get you some food. Would some fruit be suitable?" "Fruit's fine," Shoda said as he stepped towards the kitchen. "But I'd rather wait in the kitchen. I'm not used to having a separate room." That was true enough. His own apartment had been too small, but he, well, paranoid about the leech poisoning his food while he wasn't looking. "Whatever makes you comfortable," he said as he wheeled inside. "By the way, just in case you were a bit tired last night, my name's Tensei Ida. If there's any other names you wish for me to repeat, simply let me know." Shoda's eye twitched at being found out, but he didn't dwell on it as he followed Tensei into the kitchen. "This place is big. How many live here?" "You've already met everyone who does," said the vampire as he wheeled to the island bar. There were bowls of fruit and vegetables on it, all fresh, but it was too high for the leech to reach. However, a rope connected to the ceiling via a pulley and a lever hinged at the other mechanism's attraction. When Tensei pulled the lever, the island bar lowered to his height. Once comfortable, the vamp took some fruit from the bowl and sliced it up for him. Shoda almost told him not to bother to chop it, but his mind was too preoccupied thinking about the numbers living in the manor. "Only 5 of you live here." Tensei finished slicing the fruit and offered the plate to Shoda with a warm smile. "With you it makes 6. This home is Hisashi's family estate, so downsizing isn't an option, and most of us don't do well in a stable company. Namuri and I keep the place clean enough since we don't tend to make much of a mess, and we do hire some intendant gardeners to help out with the grounds. Of course, Hizashi has a line of suitors who are eager to change our little arrangement, but only time will tell how his courtship process. Shoda ate some of the sliced fruit, his eyes wandering around the room. There was an ice box with a red drop symbol on the side, so that was where they stored the blood for the household. Silver in my spine, Tensei said, catching Shoda's attention. I was at a market with my younger brother when a fight broke out between some other vampires. Turns out a slayer was in the area, and the scene turned ugly. I got a silver knife in my back while protecting my brother. Did you know silver stops a vampire's quick healing? Shoda shook his head. No. He lied, and ate another piece of fruit. The slayer kept his heartbeat steady, so the leech couldn't detect the deception. I've been in a chair ever since. Sensei finalizes, as he cleans the fruit knife in the basket of water. I just thought I'd let you know so you didn't think I'd done something disturbing. We all have a story about why we're here, and you don't need to be afraid, no matter what yours hold. You're in good hands. Next time you're lost and hungry, please don't hesitate to call a bell and give it a ring. I'm sure Namori pointed out the one in your room already. You're not bothering us at all, especially if you need help. Shoda nodded, finishing the fruit. He reached for the basket to watch the plate himself, but Tensei tried to grab the dish from his hands. The vamp moved surprisingly quickly, but Shoda's reflexes were quicker as he automatically stepped back and held onto the plate. Tensei studied him with a glance, but he smiled as he politely held out his hands. Sorry, I didn't mean to frighten you. I can wash that, if you ring the bell. He gestured for another leather. Then Namuri can start your tour? Shoda frowned, but offered him the plate. The vamp had quick reflexes for a butler. However, he was interrupted by the door opening. Whoa, my kitchen is super busy this morning. It was the chauffeur vampire that Shoda had spied in the garden earlier. Oboro, if he was not mistaken. Sensei busied himself with cleaning the plate while Oboro grinned at Shoda, making no efforts to hide his fang. Hope you had a great night. Sleep. I'll start on full breakfast soon, since you missed out on my amazing dinner. The chef pulled out the lever, and a bell sounded to alert the maid. Nim's been looking forward to the tour all week. It didn't take long for Namuri to enter the room, looking a little flustered. There's a problem. I can't find... Eyes turned to Shoda, and she instantly relaxed. Here you are. I was so worried. He had some fruit, Sensei said, as he wheeled away from the basket. So he should have enough energy to be dragged around the mayor. Great! She called eagerly, punctuating herself by smacking Oboro's butt. The vamp turned a deep scarlet, and even Shouta was perplexed. I'll deal with you later, sweetie. The human winked at the blushing leech, and grinned back goofily. Were the human and the vamp dating? Shouta really needed to save the maid from whatever sick and twisted ruse was going on here. Once, his goal was complete. So, Nimue continued, turning back to him. Ready to learn all about your new home? Shoto nodded and felt relieved when they left the kitchen, leaving the two vamps behind. As Nimue showed him through the mayor, he got a better sense of the layout, and an idea on how the butler and maid managed to keep with the place, despite the size. Although every room was clean, many had an air of disuse. The kitchen and the dining room stood out, as well as one of the living rooms, which had a beautiful gilded chaise lounge, wall-length mirrors, and beautiful antiques. These rooms felt more used, along with the music room that Amuri mentioned was a common place to find Hizashi when he wasn't hard at work sorting through some of his papers. She showed him Hisashi's study, with its walls of shelves and the sheer number of papers and books on the desk made Shoda frown. Apparently, everything wasn't all fun and games, even for the rich. There had apparently been a lot of renovations a few years back to expand the servants' quarters into a full-size bedroom. That is where we sleep now, Nimuri says excitedly. The rooms are amazing. Judging by the sight of one of the said bedrooms, Hizashi Yamada was very fond of his few servants. Typically, servant housings were small and cheap, but he spent a great deal of time and money on ensuring their comfort and care. Perhaps this was the reason he only hired a few. The first floor felt the most use of the 3 floors, while the second was mostly bedrooms and unused guest rooms that weren't as grand as the servants'. There was also a grand ballroom on the first, but it felt more disused than the rest of the house, and the grand chandelier candles were unmelted, further solidifying the disuse. It appeared that they didn't have public parties often, if at all. There was a sizable library on the second floor, however, that left Shoda impressed, both by the number of books and the stunning artworks on display. There were plenty of sunny places to sit at as well, offering potential reserves for the disarray of his stay. However, as they were about to leave the library to explore further, another figure stood in the door, pressed immaculately with a fancy waistcoat and a golden frame, monocle. Shoda knew who it was before he even registered the gaudy blonde hair. "So," said Hizashi Yamada, his grin wide enough to show his fangs. "How goes the tour?" I don't have voices for Tensei and Oboro, so currently they don't have a signature voice. I'm gonna try to see if I could give them a signature voice and stuff like that, but yeah, just figuring it out and stuff like that. But yeah, for those who aren't aware and haven't seen any of my other videos, the reason why Odds and Ends was, gone for a couple days, it was because during the holidays, during New Year's and all that, I was with my dad, and my dad doesn't live in the city I live in, and yeah, so it was a little round trip. We went to go sleep with my dad, me and my brother, so that's why I wasn't able to do the videos anymore. He talked about wanting to take us again over there for a whole week, and I told him, okay, great. I hope you are okay with me bringing my laptop and kicking you out of a room so I can record. Because I ain't about to do, I could barely do 12 recordings. I ain't about to do 28. That's insane. No. I told him that. And he's like, yeah, you could bring your laptop next time and your microphone and all that stuff so you could record. Which, talking about not recording, I've just been informed, literally, earlier today, that Sunday and Monday I won't be home. We are yet again going somewhere. This one is less of a vacation though. This one is more of we're going to a funeral that is in another city, and we're gonna have to go over there for 2 days because it's in another city, and we're gonna have to book a hotel and stuff. So yeah, about those 2 days, I'm gonna try to get videos out for those 2 days as well. That's 8 videos. I could do 8 videos. I don't know, it depends if I'm too busy on Saturday, because I have a recording that I'm gonna do on Saturday for a top secret project that I'm working on. So, I hope that doesn't bash with everything else, because that recording is gonna be long. I was already gonna take that day off, because I wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to, record on Saturday, because the recording is gonna take 5 to 6 hours to do, and that's just 5 to 6 hours, not even adding the fact that I'm gonna have to then edit that and upload that and all the kabam and kajazz, so that's something that I have to look into. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to get those videos out, so I might have those 2 days again once again, have them open. If not, I might take my laptop, but I'm not so sure. It's a funeral. We're going to a funeral. I don't think it would be appropriate to take my laptop to record a video. I'll try to get it all by Friday recorded, so that, yeah, I don't know. I'll figure it out. Hopefully I don't have to go for 2 days of not recording or not posting anything. Hopefully, because I was already planning on either taking Saturday off or pre-recording Saturday. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But yeah, just keep mindful of that. That is something that might be a possibility. And as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.